You are now living in a world where mass media technologies ensure everyone is an artist. Now, you may be wondering how it all started. With the coming of the Industrial Revolution, the invention of the printing press in 1440 by Johannes Gutenberg has allowed the availability of books to be widespread, as opposed to previous books, which were hand-scribed. Literature and media is now available to everyone, causing a shift in knowledge and power to the masses. So what is the modern version of the printing press? Radio, TV, film, internet, and our focus for today, social media. The rise of the internet has become a vital tool of communication in the modern era. The theme of digital communication has become so popular that our idea of mass communication has been completely transformed. The rise of social media is now our own personalized printing press, allowing people to access the content, artistic or otherwise, that we put out into the world. This ultimately creates a new and interesting fame culture where everyone not only desires, but has the opportunity to be famous. This has led to the creation of things like #follow-for-following, upvote bots, and competitions that involve participants advertising your content on their own pages. Social media also heavily influences the context and feeling of artworks. While mass communication is a much favored and preferred means of getting your art to reach as many people as possible, Berger argues how we interpret something depends on when and where we see it. There have been many situations in which people have seen works via the internet, only to be let down by their real-life presence. No one expects the famous Venus of Willendorf to be the size of a phone, but this is just one of the classic examples of media distortion, accommodating art to please the masses. Durbin talks of the internet being a second home to art, artists, and their communities have come to rely on technology as a means of not only communication but value. Artworks have inherited an alternate medium in technology. The problem is, how real is this experience? Not only does it shape our perception, but also our opinion on art culture in general. From museums and gallery exhibitions to posting on Instagram and asking for shares as the new form of exposure, technology has become the primary messenger of the modern age. On Instagram, everyone is an artist. Richard Prince has made random Instagram users into artists by stealing their images, enlarging and selling them as his own artworks. He calls it new portraits. Prince stole images 30 years ago and claimed no one cared. He stated that he never thinks of asking for permission. Even if he gets a no, he would have still taken the work for his use and deal with that later. And he sure did. With the repercussions of his new portraits, he received so much criticism that he made his own Instagram account private. Perhaps this is his way of coping with the criticism he receives from the public after stealing photos and getting sued. Funny how he takes people's photos without permission, yet one has to ask to view his content. Banksy is the ultimate example of fame culture in art. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who doesn't know about him. But what has enabled him to become one of the most widely recognized street artists across the Western world today? Luck and social media. The content of Banksy's work isn't saying anything particularly interesting or new. The critique of capitalism is pretty much old news in the art world. But what Banksy does differently is to make it easily consumable. If it's easily understood by the majority of people, everyone gets to feel as though they are in the know. #deep and edgy people. Dismaland was one of his largest and most publicized pieces. As the title obviously points out, he critiques Disneyland by making it, you guessed it, dismal. And despite popular opinion, it wasn't exactly groundbreaking. Frankly, it was predictable. Methods on how to cope. Is art education the answer to setting yourself apart from the masses? Education enlightens you about the difference between an Instagram artist and an artist on Instagram. But not everyone gets an art education. Should there be a distinction between those with a diploma and those without? What happens to the actual artists that sacrifice their time and money into getting a formal education and waiting for the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, only to be beat to it by someone with a handful of glitter and a fancy camera? Whether you invest in an education or not, you're most likely going to get lost in the art canon. Amateur or trained, it often makes no difference in the eyes of someone scrolling through their feed. It's time to accept that this is the new art era. There was Renaissance, modern, and postmodern, and now the mass communication period. As it always has been in the art world, the canon is decided by a group of people, and the technology such as social media has expanded the deciding group to include anyone and everyone. Because of this, there is a less defined notion of what is a real artist and who isn't. When the Medici family decided who was who in the art world, the lower class didn't protest. For what were they to know about the world of art? But mass communication makes everyone an expert at everything. People are muddling up the previously straight and forward and classical way we've looked at art since people painted themselves on cave walls. The truth is, there's not much we can do about it. So if you can't beat them, join them. It's impossible to stand out in a world where each person is bombarded with information all the time. You might be a great photographer on Instagram, but I promise you there will be more who are just as good, or better, on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, Etsy, Redbubble, billboards, magazines, newspapers, etc. The point is, no matter how hard you try to stand out as your own individual artist, you can't. The sooner you accept this, the better. So get on top of that Instagram account and be the mass media artist every millennial was born to be.